Hi everyone, it is the weekly wrap-up here. This is something we've started over the last few weeks to kind of tell you what's been going on at the sanctuary. It's just hard to cover everything in e-news as well as social media posts. So welcome, and I hope you guys kind of are starting to enjoy the weekly wrap-ups. Again, as always, I have to thank you that we are in the Miracle Match Triple Match fundraiser, and we know you have so many charities to choose from, and we're forever grateful for those of you that choose to give to the Wildcat Sanctuary. Your gift not only helps with general operating, meaning kind of the feeding, the cleaning, the salaries of the staff, but with those upcoming medical procedures, so many of you stepped up for Josie, our little office cat, and I want to just thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. We'll keep everybody posted on how she does. So I first want to start off today with some cat updates. As always, we can't answer every cat question here, but I did want to share a little bit. So Emery, the little office kitten, stray kitten that you saw showed up, has fully merged with Benny, Mr. Oreo, and Kiara. Benny's a little loud for her, so she gives out a few hisses when he comes screaming at her face, but there's been no issues, and Mr. Oreo's accepted her 100%. So Emery is definitely going to remain here at the Wildcat Sanctuary, and she is up for sponsorship too. So I know she's got a few sponsor parents, but always it takes multiple sponsor parents to cover the cost of the animals in our care. Emery is still losing a little bit of her fur, but it's looking better as we brush it. The dead fur comes off, but Dr. Campbell has asked that we just look and check her ears one more time, she's still a little itchy, to make sure there's nothing more going on. Some news that you already know is Josie, the little office cat that had facial trauma before coming to us, is going in for a CT scan, thanks to all of you, on April 26th, which is Wednesday next week. And so we don't know if we'll get the exact results right then, or wait for Dr. Campbell to be able to talk to the radiologist, things like that, to determine what would be the next step to help that eye, whether it's treatment, whether it's removal, whether there's something also going on in the nasal passage, why she's congested. So we will keep everybody posted, but that CT is going to give us the most information at once to know that we can then put a plan in place. Since she's only 3 years old, we want her comfortable for the next 18 years of her life. So thank you for that. Some other things you saw is Bobcat Haley went under for a dental and a wellness exam last week. She had been pawing at her mouth, but nothing major, but it was just abnormal for her. And upon initial exam, her teeth looked fine, but that's why we do a dental cleaning, because once you can remove some of that tartar that might be there, more comes to the surface. And that dental x-ray that donors helped us buy was able to give a dental x-ray too, and that's when we saw that she had a root that was cracked. So you couldn't see it at the surface, but that dental x-ray showed that tooth needed to come out. And so Dr. Camper was on site and did that. Haley's back and definitely started eating and doing great today. So she's a little untrusting, the caregivers said the following day, of what do you have in that food, is there medication? But she's back to herself today. Jeremy and Simon, so as we talked about, enrichment is a big thing that we do here at the sanctuary, and the caretakers have been so creative. So Alyssa decided she wanted to put a big chain across two of the big platforms in Tiger's, Jeremy, and Simon's enclosure. And then she had little cables hanging down and then meat hanging off of it. And she was very smart and said, okay, I bet you Simon's gonna be in charge and grab this hanging meat where he had to jump up and get it. So she scatter fed also around the enclosure so that Jeremy could have some easy treats. Well, when all said and done, Simon came out, he took all the meat, jumped up, got all the meat off the hanging chains, and then he decided to go kind of just check out the entire yard, and pretty much got all the pieces in the yard too. So Jeremy's was kind of wondering, where's my enrichment? But if you know those two boys, You always know that he lets Simon investigate first, but usually then he joins in. So this was a first, and Alyssa said she's making some adjustments to make sure that Jeremy will come up for his feeding enrichment in the future as well. And then everybody in Wild Woodlands got carcass feeding. So we give them carcass feeding, you know, sometimes 1 to 2 times a week, depending upon the cat. And that's really to engage their natural instincts and be able to tear from the bones, eat everything, the hides and everything. And so Winona, I guess, had a blast with her carcass feeding. And so that was nice to see. So some big news that I know Judson teased, and I want to kind of really dive in deep, is that after Gino's exam, we actually moved him to Pride Prairie next to Sophie. So what we did is that Sophie moved over across the hallway, and then the cubs went through a chute to where Kimba and Sophie used to live, because that's one of the biggest yards and they'll need to grow into it. And then we decided, since it was Gino's wellness exam and check for his thyroid, that let's use the opportunity, since he had to be sedated, to move him next to Sophie and see if there was a bond. And the reason we chose to do that is that even though him and Alyssa really like each other through the shared fence, we've tried play dates with them, and he really doesn't have a filter. And Alyssa is so calm, gentle, and supportive, and Gino was kind of just running her over. He was being too large and in charge, jumping at her, chasing her, and she wouldn't tell him no. She was just trying to be gentle. Where we know Sophie has kind of been the dominant of her and Kimba, and she would definitely tell Kimba enough is enough. So we thought this, you know, was worth the shot to see if these two liked each other. So what we did is we just gave them their holding yards and their indoor bedrooms, and both are on a shared wall. And, you know, everybody said, did she recognize that that's her son right away? We'll never know exactly what she thought, but I can tell you that they're both needing to be reacquainted. When you move Gino or give him anything new, there is an adaptation period because of his neurological condition. And that means he'll circle a little more, he'll have nystagmus more, and that's just because there's so much stimuli in a new place that his brain gets overloaded. And so it's too early to tell how that relationship's gonna go because of that overstimulation that Gino's feeling right now, but every day it gets better and better. So there's been no negativity, there's been no roaring, no hissing. You know, sometimes Gino will take a little bit of opportunity as Sophie's walking away to do a false charge, playful at the fence, like he was gonna jump on her. Not be super negative, but be a little overzealous. So we are gonna leave that for another week so that Gino can kind of get used to his space, then give them the access to their yards, and then determine if a play date is appropriate. The good news is we have so many options to bring him back to next to Alyssa. We also have a few other options of Alyssa possibly getting other friends, because our goal would really be that Alyssa could be in the same habitat because she loves living with other cats. We saw that with Choopy and Wally before they passed away of old age. And we know at the Tiger King Park, she was with a special needs brother that somehow got separated. They were separated when the Department of Justice went there to seize, so the owners did that. Sadly, we wish they were still together, but you can see Alyssa's been a huge, huge godsend to Chupina and others that have always wanted attention and love from another cat. So we're really hoping that we can find her a miracle match. If she goes downhill at all, or Gino and Sophie are not a pair, of course we're gonna put them back side by side. It's never one cat gets something at the detriment to another cat. It is about individualized care and seeing how each can flourish, and seeing if Alyssa likes her new neighbors that are going to be moving in the next couple weeks, and see if there's a miracle match there. And so some good questions I got from sponsor parents of Gino is, you know, in his old rooms, they were blue to help calm him and bring him inside. Is he going to get blue rooms in Pride Prairie for his neurological condition? The good news is Pride Prairie is already so bright, even though the walls are concrete, because there's a lot more windows, there's less rooms, the ground is really bright. And so Gino hasn't had any concerns of coming in and out of his room like he did in Wild Woodlands, where it's a much darker building and that blue really helps. So the good news, we don't think we have to make any adjustments based on what we're seeing so far. And again, the other question was, what does it mean for Alyssa? Don't worry, Alyssa is high on our radar, and definitely we have plans to see if there's another friend for her. And if not, then she'll get to see Gino again one day. So we'll keep everybody posted on that. Also, Bosco, our old serval that people are asking about, he's kind of staying status quo, which is all we can ask for in a 22-year-old serval. He allowed Dr. Campbell and I to give him his Silencia injection. As you know, we're a no-contact sanctuary, but there are special exceptions to that. Bosco is a 22-year-old serval with severe osteoarthritis. He's on a lot of pain management, and he is probably the most mellow serval we've ever had. So Dr. Campbell and I discussed that I was a little hesitant to sedate him based on his age to check his knee that, you know, was a little unstable. And so we fed him meat while Dr. Campbell was able to manipulate both back knees, and Bosco did great. And it does appear that Bosco probably has an old torn ACL that is not bothering him. There was no pain reflex when Dr. Campbell manipulated his leg. It was just a little bit unstable. So at this point, we're staying the course with medication, watching him, making sure he has quality of life and is comfortable. But so far, so good on that. The other good news is we were evaluating Chili. You remember Chili's the African serval that came to us with genetic metabolic bone disease. He had 2 fractures in his back legs, and he's early on. He's had countless numbers of surgeries, a leg amputation, plates put in. He's had a long haul for his little 3.5-year-old life. And he had a small yard and a room in small cat track over winter. And Dr. Campbell gave approval based on how he's been doing to give him access to the full yard in the next couple weeks. And that's a big deal because he's been kind of in quarantine in smaller spaces, and he really likes having serval neighbors. So Teresa and the staff are looking at what perches have to come out. Can his rehabilitation bridge go in so we can continue to do the physical therapy with him? And then maybe in the future, it's not out of the realm of possibility that he could live with another serval as long as they don't pick on him because of his condition. So that's definitely some thoughts that we'll be thinking about in the future. Mike, the caretaker, also was making new PVC rattles, he calls them. They're pretty awesome. In the old days, we had like these PVC tubes with ends on them, holes drilled in, and they were kind of like puzzle feeders. This time he made a big one, but he put rice in it so that when it moves, the rice moves around, it kind of wobbles, it makes noise, and he was gonna give it, I believe, to Shazam today. So we'll see how that goes for sure. And then all the bobcats and servals and wildcat pines, Jackie wanted to give them cucumbers today as enrichment and to see what they will do. If you remember, we had a bobcat we rescued named Tractor that was not fed meat because the owner didn't want him to turn wild. And he loved cucumbers his whole life. We finally were able to get him on a proper diet by wrapping deli meat around green beans and around cucumber slices. So when he did pass away of old age, he was eating a proper diet, but still, if you had a cucumber within 30 feet of that enclosure, Tractor would be so excited and just loved his cucumbers. So it'll be fun to see what they do today. So projects going on right now. The Cheetah Yard, I can't tell you how fast and amazing the facilities crew and our caretakers and interns have been about clearing out all the trees besides pine trees in the Cheetah Yard because it was getting overgrown and we want cheetahs to have sun. And then also they had to repair the recurve between Canada Lynx Ramsey and the Cheetah Yard before the cheetahs can move back. So they are hoping that'll be done by the end of the weekend, and they're going to be then moving the cheetah boys back down hopefully next week. And Elise has already brought up the operant conditioning again, working on crate training, which the cheetahs have been really cooperative with, to make the process of them moving back down as simple as possible. We also had the electricians on site for estimates. We're gonna having a big project of running electric to 3 or 4 areas of our property. Ever since we put in the animal care center, what that company did is they came in and they spliced our old 400 amp service and moved the electric on to this building. Those splices have been giving out. We had to repair Hybrid Havens electric went down in the middle of the winter, and we had generators and extension cords and portable heat. We've had the pole building go down. Everything that has gone through that splice has gone down, and unfortunately the recourse is gone. We have fought that company over and over. They are not willing to say that the splice was their fault, and guess what? When it comes down to it, it is all about the animals, and we need to make sure we have electric year-round for heat, for you know, utilities, for everything, for these electricity for these cats. So we are rerunning that electric at our own cost because it's the right thing to do. So they were here for that. And then we have the big volunteer appreciation lunch on Saturday. Right now we have 27 of our volunteers coming. It's we're having a spaghetti lunch. It's mostly so everybody, these volunteers, can get to know each other because they come on different days here at the sanctuary. And it's really to thank those who've contributed so many hours during the last year here at the sanctuary. And we have volunteers that have been with us 20 years, and we have volunteers that have only been with us a year but are giving full-time hours. So these volunteers really are the lifeline of the sanctuary. We also had Northern Wisconsin Fence came out to look at Henry and Haley's yard. They're gonna come back next week if the weather permits. And so while our crew is working on the Cheetah Yard and some other repairs from the winter ice storm, Northern Wisconsin Fence is gonna come and work on Henry and Haley. And that means if we dual path, these cats can get back into the areas they need to be. For those that don't know, we had a huge ice storm this winter, and now we're at the snowiest winter in history in Minnesota. So it was rough. If you drive down our road on the way into the sanctuary, it looks like a tornado hit because so many trees are broken, so many trees are down, and that was all from the ice storm this winter. We also had the DNR on property, and the DNR came in to do an assessment for wildfires. As you know, we've talked about prevention and things like that, and we were really happy to hear that the DNR was completely impressed with our setup. Our roads that are around all the habitats really act as a fire break. We have a fire break around the outside of the property fence. So they were really happy that said they don't have any concerns here, and if there ever was a wildfire, that they felt confident that we wouldn't have to evacuate. We would follow our shelter in place orders, and they could manage that. So that's always awesome to hear. They had a great recommendation of, even though we have a lot of hydrants around the property, we have a lot of fire equipment, that if we got a bigger tank that sat on the back of a UTV with a pump, that would be great. They also loved that we have the ponds and the tiger pools, because reverse pump can give them all the water they need if we had a grass fire or something like that. So just one of the many things when we're doing crisis planning that we look at, back from tornadoes to flooding to even dry conditions that can cause wildfires. Also, as part of transparency and being a nonprofit, we pay every year to have an auditor review all our books, do checks and balances, and make sure there's no more recommendations they have. So the audit process is lengthy. It's everything from pulling accounts receivable, accounts payable, receipts, donation acknowledgments, everything, and that audit can take about 3 to 4 months. But it is our way of making sure we're being the best stewards of your dollars, and that we're always having our accounting process, checks and balances, and all that in place to maintain a great rating as a nonprofit. And then also, on top of the fire with the DNR, the Wildfires Checklist, Teresa went over with all the staff our extreme weather protocol. And we do this going into the springtime because we can have straight line winds, we can have tornadoes in Minnesota, we can have extreme heat. And so showing and talking about the signs of heat stroke in humans and volunteers, but also in animals. Over the years, we've had 1 or 2 cats with heat stroke that we were able to save. And also older cats. Cats don't drink like dogs do. Cats will overheat under a tree in the shade and they will not get up to drink. Also, you might not know that cats are very inefficient at hydrating and drinking. How they scoop their tongue and how they use it, they lose more water than they consume. And so we talked about if you're gonna feed by a water bucket. So when the cats get up to eat, right there the water's accessible. It's about using the ice cubes that we have from the ice machine you helped buy. It's about giving blood sickles. It's about giving lots of options for water because we need to make it convenient and we need to motivate cats to a lot of times come up and drink themselves. And so that's a really important thing, especially for our geriatrics as the weather gets warmer. As you know, Gino and volunteers were manning the booth at Pop Cats. It's kind of a fun all-you-purpose kind of cat event here. And Gina said it went really well. A lot of people stopped by, but more importantly, she said she had 120 people sign up for emails, which means 120 more people are going to learn about our mission, our cause, and how they can help end the captive wildlife crisis. So that's super awesome. One of our volunteers, Barb, who's amazing, she does physical therapy. She used to be an EMT. She's on the mowing team, but she also works as one of our healing touch practitioners. Lori is the other one. And yes, we use a lot of Western medicine on site, but we also really like looking at energy work for the cats. Not only to supplement other things we're doing, but Barb always comes and teaches, and Lori comes and teaches our interns, and they do a formal class with them. Lori's been the one doing that lately, but about staying neutral, especially if you're going around the Bengals and the hybrids and the really high stress cats, of grounding yourself, being neutral, making sure you're aware that whatever energy you bring, if you've had a bad day at home, if you're stressed, you're going to project that onto a cat unless you can ground yourself and be neutral. And so they really share how to do that and best practices. And then, talking about small cat crisis, I got an email on 5 F1 breeding savannas that need a home. The breeder, they're having some family issues. The families are trying to convince them to surrender. Sadly, they don't all live together, so it would be 3 habitats. We are full because we have a waiting list, and we have said yes to other cats first. So I reached out to a couple sanctuaries that didn't have space because they don't specialize in small cats. Of course, my dear friend Cheryl at Wildcat Ridge, she's trying to help in any way she can too, but she doesn't have capacity for the 5. So we're going down the list and looking at rescue groups and things like that. And we also know that it was a family member that called for a family member, so we don't know how serious the breeder is about surrendering. But it was just another underscore of the captive wildlife crisis and the hybrid crisis. And then you've probably all seen that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife posted the Big Cat Public Safety Act registration deadline coming up in June. Really a lot of the communication they just sent out right now is for private owners, people that have a pet tiger or a pet big cat, how they need to comply with the federal law. And then hopefully we'll see soon even more communication about the USDA licensed exhibitors and how they comply with the law, which means no more cub petting, etc., etc. And then another hard but beautiful thing that happens here in the springtime is that we collect all of our memorial plaques of cats that have passed through the winter. And our facilities team goes out once the snow's melted and puts those up in the pavilion alongside all the plaques from the Pride on the other side. So they're on my desk all winter long, and it's hard to see them go, but it's a beautiful way to remember them outside in the memorial garden. So we thank you always for the forever sponsors that buy the plaques and our painted rocks for the animals that are no longer with us physically. And that's kind of our updates for the week. There's still a lot going on here, a lot going on outside. Next week we're talking about, is there going to be a vet day or not? There's always a balance. If they're just wellness exams, we can always move those. They're not as critical, especially if the caretakers need those days to get habitat improvements, especially repairs done so that cats can get access to their habitats. When we look at here is, if you look at animal care, it's like a pie chart, right? And medical veterinary care is part of that. Physical well-being, mental well-being, nutritious food. And so one doesn't outweigh the other unless you're like in a critical injury of a cat or a critical health time. But if it's a wellness check, that's all balanced again with other things the cats need to make them have a wonderful holistic life. And so sometimes getting Henry and Haley out or the cheetahs moved is a bigger benefit to them than an update on a wellness exam. But Josie's still on our top priority, and then our staff and vet team have been watching other cats, especially the older ones, or watching Gino to make sure the stress of the move isn't too much and things like that. So I look forward to seeing you on a weekly basis for the weekly wrap up. We'll see what we do next week, because we definitely want you to tune in. Next week we have some big news and we have some fun live posts that will be on Wednesday the 26th. So that'll be our live post day, kind of our culmination of the triple match. We want to make sure that we hit that 70,000 mark so that we get every penny of that triple match. And we're so thankful for every that's donated, not once, but twice, but 3 times. But we have some special incentives at the end of next week too, in case you want to give again. So stay tuned, and thank you for helping us make Miracle Match, the triple match, the most successful we can for the cats here at the sanctuary. Have a great rest of your week.